Welcome everybody. Welcome to Tarot Journeys with Guy. How are you doing? Glad to see everybody here. Today, what we're going to look at is the moon. We're going to take a deeper look at what's going on in space and what do they know about the moon and what's up on the moon? What's going on there right now? What are they not telling us is essentially what I'm curious about. I want to look into what's their kind of next step with their space program. Now, every so often you'll hear things about moon missions. Now, recently there's been a couple of moon missions, these unmanned landers launching to the moon. One was, Russia just did one recently. China and India have tried to do these landings, and just recently I think one of their landers has crashed on the moon. China has done a lot of things and not telling the world community and the public. Same with NASA. NASA sort of has their Artemis program, and that's kind of on the back burner. We're not sure what's going on with that, right? And it's kind of goes into this idea of like this shadow war, this deep state war that has come to the surface that we've all kind of been thrust into. Part of it is the play with space, okay? So, in like Space Force, before Trump left office, creating a new branch of the military, the Space Force, right? And then now you hear things about like how elements of Space Force and Space Commands, they're kind of fighting and squaring off. And we're in the midst of this whole situation, this PSYOP. And part of it is space. Now, the UFO threat, the failed UFO threat, let's call it, is kind of still prevalent. It's still there. But yet that's kind of, it's part of their sort of plan, was to trigger certain false flag events, certain PSYOPs, to kind of push the agenda, to continue the agenda towards the global system. And so I thought, it'd be a good time to look into this. I'm always curious about it. I want to know what they've got up there. I want to know if there is actually like a moon base, that kind of thing. What are they doing? What we'll do is we'll kind of take more of a general view, and then maybe we'll narrow it down a little bit more, see what we can come up with. All right. Man, I keep getting the same kind of thing. I mean, if people remember, if you go back and watch, I think it was the UFO video that I did. And I think it came up in a few other things too. Just this idea that they found artifacts, or they found a body, or like a skeleton or something. So like the Four of Swords, which is kind of interesting. It also plays into this idea that we haven't been to the moon for for 50 years. So it's kind of like this thing that they kind of keep sort of in the perspective, right? It's like in the mind. So like, especially when we're talking about anything around like PSYOPs or this deep state war and this thing that they're sort of projecting onto us, the swords really come up, right? And I mean, the swords can be taken on many different levels, but it's in our thoughts. It's sort of in the mind. And so it's like the moon is such a prevalent, it's always been this thing of fascination for humanity. Okay, so it's deep-seated is kind of, I guess, what this is kind of saying. They want to put what they have found up there and what they are covering up, because this is also kind of like a cover-up. I mean, it's a sepulcher. Like this is a sepulcher, a lid, right? So it's a sealed, like a tomb. So there's something sealed that they're covering, right? Man, yeah, they have found a lot more than what they're telling the public. I mean, the strength card reversed is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of an interesting way of reading it. I mean, the transcendence felt level. So in some ways, I don't necessarily believe like what they say they did on the moon is correct. I'm not so far to say that the entire moon landings were faked, but I do think some of it was. I think what was shown to the public was projected, was maybe like even done in a film set or something, parts of it, and then parts of it are authentic. And it's a mix and a match, because I mean, a big part of the whole thing with NASA has been that it's this public funded agency, but yet it had always in a part of it a military mandate, which hasn't always been out in the public, like in public knowledge. It has become recently, and especially over the last couple of decades, but this is kind of what we're dealing with. They're trying to cover their tracks for what they found. And so like the strength card, like life force, strength represents the life force. And then seeing like something is unfinished. So like the death card kind of represents like unfinished business in a lot of ways. And I mean, some of these cards kind of pull to this. All three of these cards are kind of, they all kind of represent that kind of same motion of death, of transcendence, of keeping still, right? Putting an end to a cycle, right? So what they're trying to do is like promote for the future generations the same thing that they had done in the 60s, except in the thing in the 60s, like with the space race and everything, was kind of like, this was a narrative that they also created to spur people to sort of move in another direction. Meanwhile, they had this whole other thing going on, like this whole other thing, like for instance, like just the levels of cooperation between the Soviet Union and the United States, even in the 60s, was a lot greater than what people know. And that's what we've found out as we've gotten farther and farther away from that era and the Soviet Union collapsing and information coming out, right? So this is kind of part of it. But it's definitely like a cover-up card, right? But like this thing of like the new mission is, especially from the States, is sort of like this new message, right? And see, but then China and Russia, I mean, Russia has made obvious statements about part of their aims of launching craft to the moon, and that is to prove whether the United States went there or not. And a lot of scientists don't believe that they did. But I mean, this is kind of what happens when you've been lied to continuously, or you're fighting an intelligence war. Nothing can be trusted. Russia, and the card of secrets comes up. Okay, so that's interesting. That's another that kind of confirms. But yet here, let's just see what else. So yeah, it is kind of part of their battle, or these nation states, these groups in the public arena give out this perception that they are against each other and fighting. But in truth, when they start doing these kind of things, like going out into space, it becomes this cooperative effort. And they're actually a lot more cooperative and together than what they present, even Russia against the world and things like that. They're going for power. It's about power. So they create this theater so that we submit as the people, especially now, how everything kind of is operating. We're moving into this Aquarian era where it is much more independent, in a sense. Independent, but yet the group has kind of precedence over the individual in an Aquarius kind of energy, or an Aquarian age. So like volunteering for enslavement, volunteering for submitting to power is more to the forefront, rather than forcing people to submit, even though that's a big part of it, right? So the space stuff and the technology and all of that, that's part of their little traps that they put out there to kind of get us to kind of go along. Even though like they do this stuff, like they definitely have people. Like, I mean, they have things going on all the time that they're not telling us. Like, and it's kind of part of their next step. It's part of their expansion, especially this corporate financial system that we're living in, in order for them to continue to hold power and become more powerful, let's say, more wealthy, there needs to be expansion. It's that kind of thinking. And so that is sort of that was the premise for the last 50 years or so, that it will go out to space. Their plans have been kiboshed as well, right? They've been disrupted. But what they're hiding is, this is not really telling me fully, but I do get the sense of like what is up there that they really don't want people to know is that there are like artifact structures, maybe even they found fossils, body parts, I'm not sure, but very old, right? Dead. Okay, this is interesting. For the last 3 years, they have actually built a new infrastructure for going back and forth to the moon. And they're actually doing it. And a lot of it is, it's not necessarily manned mission, like it's not manned flights, but it is unmanned. But there seems to be some kind of like potential, it's manned as well. It's manned and unmanned, and it's constant. It's not and so it's like almost like there's a base up there. And I think it has a lot to do with, what they're scoping out is the prospect for like mining or retrieving minerals of some sort. Right, this idea, like heavy water, like there's water on the moon too. There's a way to extract water that they understand. And I guess that's also why they're trying to that's why they're trying to land on the south region of the moon, because apparently there's water sources there that could enable them to power craft, right? But yet that's what they tell people, right? But this is kind of like they're already doing it. But they've created like an infrastructure where they can reliably go back and forth. And it is under the auspices of a military. And that's the thing, like what we understand, like the secret space program was developed before, more than likely than NASA, but ran equal. And one of the ways that you can kind of get an insight into this is look at what the Air Force has been doing. And like the whole time they've been launching rockets, and they still launch rockets. Okay, so what this is kind of talking about is like an infrastructure, like satellite relays and like stations, and the ability to sort of reliably move back and forth without any kind of problems. But it's also potentially with like a technology we're not aware of, and that's part of the secret, or that's the plan. And they're doing something, and part of it is an experiment with the sun. Something is going on with the sun. They're doing it to the sun, though. They're trying to pull, what my first thought was is like pulling energy from the sun, like in a very large capacity. I kind of get this feeling like they've got like some kind of colony or something. And man, we've heard this like alternative 3. They've kidnapped people, and I think that might be part of it. Kind of like in the bases, underground bases and stuff. They got people out there. Anyway, okay, let's look deeper. So maybe a base. Okay. See, and I wonder about Mars too, right? See, I kind of hope we get back to the days where we, get the telescopes out and start watching the moon again. Stop looking at the internet and start looking out into space and watching and like paying attention, because that's how they also get caught, is these guys watch them, right? A huge it's so funny. The moon card popped out, right? Also the 10 of Cups. So interesting. That's what they did in the 60s. They used the moon as a way to get people all together and to like deflect the knowledge of the true course of the Cold War. get people like directed from looking at the fact that a coup was taking place, like in the Western world, like in the United States. Yeah, the moon. Okay. Hitting on people's emotion, the emotion of togetherness and belonging and the cause, right? Like patriotism as well in that sense. Okay, what else do we want to know? Yeah, just a deeper look. What else are they doing? Like, what exactly are they doing up there? Is there a base up there? How many people are up there? Is there a lot of people up there? That's what we want to know. Are there artifacts? Is that part of it? Is like because that's what I picked up in that other reading, that there was artifacts and potentially like skeletons of some sort, but then this communication thing kind of pops up. And I've read also like in various books where that's also kind of what they think, so that they've discovered like an ancient communication device that enables them to communicate in real time anywhere. And, and that's the kind of vibe that I'm picking up. Yeah, man, they like this thing with the climate, and they keep saying that the climate is this, the climate is that, but they've been manipulating the climate. They've been doing things to the weather on Earth, but they've been doing it out in space, and they've been doing it directly to the sun. And that's part of the lie. They don't want people to know that they're doing that. They've got some kind of an array, and it's like on the dark side of the moon, potentially. Yeah, they've had a couple of like calamities. They've had a couple of disasters actually up there. Man, things run so deep that if it came out, nobody would believe it. 4 years ago, when was that? 2018, but that's like part of it. There was a battle for this place. They had to evacuate it. Yeah, there was some kind of battle, and yeah, a new group has kind of come in, but yet there's still kind of a back and forth. There's still something that kind of goes back and forth, and it hasn't been fully secured. So like, yeah, like it's been fully evacuated, but there's like a station or something up there, and it's almost like part of it is this attempt to activate a Stargate or some ability to travel in other galaxies, other dimensions, almost instantaneously. But yet there was a battle for this. And so, but they've activated this tech, eh? People talk about this. This isn't unknown to people. People have talked about this a lot. I mean, this kind of goes in line with Operation Looking Glass as well, like time travel. They had this whole thing. It kind of originally started as almost like a mining operation or some kind of retrieving and mining. Okay, and they did find some things, but it's more kind of like accessing and it's like a technology, I guess, and accessing like a device or something, and then that kind of turned towards this thing with the sun. In that process, I guess they had discovered a water supply, but that would enable them to combine larger molecule chains. That's like the beginning of it, I guess. And that's like what you need to do if you're going to go and colonize other places. I don't know. Unbelievable, man. And yeah, they're hiding it. Yeah, I keep picking up too. They found some structures, and they found skeletons, if not one or a couple, but not a lot. And it's like skeletal remains, and it's of a hominid species, but it's not humans. So that meaning like they're human-like, but it's not humans. And it has miffed them the whole time. It's part of why they've turned everything out. And I mean, like the Majestic 12 thing and all of that, like having contact. This might be part of it. They might have been directed there. I don't know. I mean, they might have been directed there to actually go and find some of this stuff. Okay. Yeah, I think they've attempted to do some jumps and it's backfired on them up there. That's a thing. or something. It's like accessing this technology has backfired on them. And I'm not getting like a huge base or anything, but there is something up there that people can stay for long periods of time. It's not very big though. It can only handle a handful of people or something. There might be a couple of those connected together, kind of like how they make this space station, right? Okay, one more. See, the other place that kind of connects with the moon on Earth is Antarctica. And Antarctica is another one we're going to read on, because that one is just as mysterious as the moon, and really more cover-ups around Antarctica go on still to this day than anywhere else. And so, right, and that's the thing. It's like their bloody spaceport might be down there, or like part of this technology might be down there. Some people even say like there's a Stargate. They found like, you know, this idea that they found technology or artifacts, artifacts like ruins. Well, yeah, we've already talked about that, this new mission. Okay, so this card also has come up in every part, and like, it's funny, if you look in the card itself, it has ships moving back and forth, and this guy is like setting up like a business, a trade back and forth. He's an artisan. He's this guy that owns boats, and he sends the boats overseas, off the world. They come back, right, and creating like an infrastructure. So this was birthed off of the failing of the first one, which is what they don't want you to know. And they don't want you to know how much they're moving back and forth and what they're doing back and forth. And that's like a big thing. Like, and that we've kind of have known this for quite a while. Like, there's a lot of evidence for the last like 30 years at least. So, and that's kind of part of it, right? It's like they're building a trade system that's already there, and they're going to present it to the public. That's what they want. It's potentially the next kind of like what they want to present to people, to present it to humanity as a noble effort, as this sort of aim to kind of go for. But oh, the devil. Good old devil always pops up somewhere in the reading, eh? Yeah, energy source, new energy abilities. That's what it is, and like anti-grav, and that's what they're hiding, right? And they are kind of ensnaring us in one system, meanwhile utilizing a whole other system. So like this idea of launching spaceships or rockets, yeah, they're not doing that. That's only for show and for low Earth orbit and launching satellites and things. But like, yeah, like the SpaceX thing is a joke. It's a ruse. It's there to ensnare us. It's there to suck a whole bunch of money out of the coffers, out of people's pockets, and put it into these projects, and to continue to do so. Well, that's it, everybody. That was kind of wild. We'll probably look into other things like it more, probably dig a little bit deeper later on, but that I think is enough for tonight. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope everything is working out and you have a wonderful day. Make sure you hit the subscribe button, notification bell. Please leave a comment, share and like the video. Take care, and I hope to see you on the next one. Bye-bye.